Hey everyone, and welcome to the next edition of the Into the Rift podcast, a Riftbound TCG podcast. And there is so much to talk about today, some pertinent information. Literally this morning, if you're watching this on release, is going to be the store launch of the new products. So stay tuned for that information. And if you're watching this after, it's probably already sold out, but there's going to be some more information with regards to that as well. So do bear that in mind. We're going to talk about Pixelborn. Pixelborn is going to have a new client for Riftbound TCG, which is exciting. There's a new deck taking over the meta. And then finally, prices are crashing around the Riftbound universe. Cards are getting cheaper by the day, which is a good thing. And Joe is going to break it all down for us. But with that being said, Joe, how are you, my man?
Yeah, very well, thank you, Alex. Looking forward to another week discussing Riftbound. There's all sorts of Spiritforged stuff happening, but the market has caught my eye this week, Alex. It's very, very interesting.
I mean, next week is going to be all about the decks and the regionals and stuff like that. But in the meantime, especially as you get closer and closer to that English Spiritforged launch, we're most certainly going to see a complete change in the market dynamics happening with Riftbound, and we're starting to see it already, and we will be touching on that later. But I want to get right to the most important thing right off the rip here, and that is that in Riftbound, we have some new information that has come out about the store updates for Spiritforged. And so I want to break that down right now. It was posted in a blog post. We will have the link in the description down below so you guys can follow along if you want. This was posted on the 8th of January. And basically what they're saying is for Spiritforged, they're going to be having some pre-orders into the store. They will be starting on January 13th at 9 a.m. Pacific time. So this podcast would have been out for several hours in advance of that. But just because the way the timing works, though, we want you to know that it is available basically ASAP. So if you'd like to get a MSRP pre-order from the official Riot store, now would be the time to do it, Joe.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's slightly different, Alex, compared with Origins. On Origins, there was 3 booster boxes per Riot ID initially. And then they did a sort of second wave of pre-orders when then it was limited to 1 booster box per Riot ID. And I think unsurprisingly, considering how short the supply was for Origins, they've also limited the Spiritforged pre-orders to 1 booster box per Riot ID. But interestingly, the champion decks, which are like the starter decks of Rumble and Fiora, you can actually have 3 of those per Riot ID. And that's so you could have 3 Rumble and 3 Fiora and 1 booster box. So you would imagine that most people are going to be just getting the booster box and leaving the starter decks. But it's worth noting those starter decks, Alex, are significantly improved, and I think very good value for money, both of those starter decks.
Yeah, if I'm able to do it, I think my goal is to get a booster box in one of each of the starter decks. I've been teaching my brother and some family and friends how to play Riftbound, like just for fun, kind of on the weekend type thing. And I might even pick up an extra starter deck or 2 just so I have it for friends and family. And I don't know what it is. I love in TCGs having starter decks available pre-sleeved in a case ready to go so that when someone comes over and they want to learn something new, I don't have to be like, here's a super complicated set deck to try to figure out how to learn. It's like, no, here is a Jinx starter deck, or here is the Victor starter deck, and it kind of just gets them through the hoops, right? So I've always really appreciated that. So that's kind of what I hope to do. And well, again, I'm using the word hope because I have no idea how this website's going to handle the influx of people. They are saying they've made some back-end changes, so hopefully that actually comes to fruition. They are going to be starting fulfillment for the February 13th release. Hopefully they're trying to get those booster boxes into your hands by then. There's a chance, though, that might not totally work. I don't expect it. I'm in Canada, so there's a good chance that I won't be seeing those until, I don't know, March, probably for me, but one can hope, right? One can hope. Maybe I'll get a little lucky. Anything else you want to add about the Spiritforged launch? I just want to start right off with that because I think it was very important. You might be watching and be like, that's in 10 minutes. You know what I mean? So I want to get it out there.
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning that Riot themselves say here that if you're wanting product immediately, i.e. if you're playing in Bologna, especially because Bologna, I think, is like a week after this, Vegas is 2 or 3 weeks after this, that you might be best off going to your LGS to get pre-orders there because they're going to have it on the 13th, whereas it seems as though they're going to start fulfilling the pre-orders on February 13th. So it's not like you're going to be, pre-order. In a lot of other worlds, you would expect that you would receive that product on the day but that's not going to be the case as it stands for Spiritforged, and hopefully they can work to speed that up as time goes on.
There will also be a Lunar Bundle for 2026 in Chinese language only. Joe, anything you'd like to mention about this?
I mean, it's nice to see. We did see that it was available in China. The fact that they're making it available to everybody, even if it's only in Chinese, I think can only be a good thing. This is one I'll be skipping personally, Alex. I've spent a little bit too much money on Riftbound already, so I skipped the World's Bundle, and I think I'll be skipping this as well. But I think it's really nice to have for collectors, especially this early on in the game. These kind of early promos are usually going to hold quite a bit of value for collectors and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And from my understanding, the rules, they allow you to mix and match. Like if you have a legend that's in Chinese because you want to, you can use your Chinese legend alongside an English set of cards, correct?
Yeah, as long as it's the legend, it can be Chinese. You can also have like Chinese runes, for example, but all of the runes have to be Chinese. And in a similar way, you can have Chinese cards in your main deck, but then all of the main deck would have to be Chinese.
So your legend can be Chinese and the rest of your main deck be a English-based deck. Okay.
Yeah, I'm fairly certain on that because I have a Chinese Jinx, and when I heard that news, I was like, okay, cool. I can actually, I can use that. I must admit, I haven't used that, but I can if I want to.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So you took like special mental note of that when it came up.
Exactly.
Okay, perfect. All right. So there's a couple other things worth mentioning here. Proving Grounds. They're being restocked, but it's not quite that simple. Joe, different supplier. Increase in cost going from a $30 MSRP to a $40 MSRP. And I don't know about you, but I was not seeing Proving Grounds for MSRP. In Canada, they were selling. I told this story once before. I'll say it again. Basically, what was happening in Canada was the Proving Grounds were $30 MSRP. And then you had to enter a raffle to get a chance to win. So if let's say you won the raffle, it was then $100 Canadian to buy the Proving Grounds. That was the change of markup, right? So, you know, it's insane how like sought after this was. And now that it is being reprinted, it's being reprinted by a different supplier.
It's really interesting with the card thickness. I mean, $40 as the increase. I think $40 is still a good price for the product if you can get it. Worth noting, as we're going to see in our market review later, Flash is currently going for $40 as a single. So Proving Grounds is no surprise that it's being scalped, really, is it? When you can buy the product for 40, sell your 2 copies of Flash, double your money, keep the rest if you really wanted to. But in terms of this, different printing partners really interesting. In other card games, to use the example of Disney Lorcana, there's different card stock based on what region. So for example, the English cards are one stock, and then the Japanese cards are slightly thicker. And you can actually tell the difference quite subtly. It's really important, as soon as you see different printing partner, you're like, oh, okay, well then, could there be some cheating involved where like you can track the different thickness of the card? But Riot say in this article they've tested it, and that their devs were unable to spot the difference between them. So clearly it's going to be of the same card's thickness and all that sort of stuff, which I think is the most important thing. And again, credit to Riot for being extremely good with communication and being completely upfront about all this sort of stuff.
Yeah, Alter TCG had something interesting, kind of like similar, where in Europe, specifically for their Kickstarter editions, they were printed by one particular manufacturer. And then in NA, the boxes found at LGS's were printed by a completely different manufacturer. And the quality of the prints was totally different. The coloring was slightly different. Like you could actually tell which cards were which was, I don't know, it was a bit of a challenge at times. The thickness was similar, but there was definitely a slight quality difference between the two that was noticeable for people that were really paying attention. So yeah, that's the Proving Grounds restock. And I mean, hopefully Spiritforged takes also some heat off of like having to have Annie or Master Yi, right? So hopefully as the meta shifts, individual legends in the Proving Grounds might actually cause it to come down on the secondary market if necessary as well, which is another consideration. Then we have a Origins restock. Joe, what do you think about the Origins restock?
Yeah, I think on this one, it's basically they're saying there's more coming, but not exactly immediately. That they're going to continue to reprint it. And Riot's always been quite open with they want this game to be accessible to players. And it's good that, they're not just saying, okay, it's done now. Like, I mean, I've been looking at One Piece recently, and I recently discovered that the One Piece trading card game, they don't do reprints. What that's resulting to in One Piece, which is becoming very popular at the moment with the collector market, is you've got a lot of investors that are holding boxes and just holding and holding. The fact that Riot are coming here saying, we're going to be printing more is actually a deterrent for investors just wanting to keep sealed product. And that's good, isn't it, for players? We don't want product collecting dust on someone's shelf. We want it in players' hands at local game stores.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And they are saying that it'll be coming from the Riot merch store as well, which is great. Because from my experience, like even I joked about it before, but like, a lot of the LGSs that I've been going to are kind of pre-scalping the product. They're not selling it at MSRP. They're selling it well above that right from the get-go because they knew it was in such high demand. And I will add that I actually don't expect Spiritforged to have the same demand levels of Origins. I think there is a certain level of excitement about like that first set, right? Just like in Lorcana, the first chapter had a very specific flavor to it that people wanted that first inaugural set. And it wouldn't surprise me if there's just more demand for Origins at launch in comparison to what Spiritforged will be at launch. Despite the fact that I think that Spiritforged is adding a whole bunch of really cool stuff. So I'd be curious as to how they're planning their print run overall.
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing we can talk a little bit more about with our market review later as well, because naturally, as soon as you've got a second set, the card pool's doubling in size. And that also means that singles should be going down in price overall, which is what we're going to see as the market is crashing. Crashing is a bit of a stretch, but I mean, all of the big cards are down on price. I'm not sure you can call it a crash necessarily, because I think it's like a good thing. Crash is sort of like got some negative connotations, whereas I think we can all agree that prices coming down is actually good for everybody.
Yeah, and the Arcane Box did have a slight shipping delay. I actually managed to get an Arcane Box, which is kind of exciting. The website worked for me on that given day, and I was like, this actually looks really cool. I like really interesting collectible items like that, so I did manage to get one, which I am excited for, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I also got my hands on it, Alex. I've actually, my first Riftbound purchase was over a year ago now. I've got the Chinese Arcane Box, and it's a really nice product. So I'm hoping for the same sort of style. It's like a nice magnetic box that you get that you can look at your cards through. You can take your cards out if you so wish. And there's quite a few decent cards in there, like the Vi that is played in all these Annie decks as part of that bundle. So I'm excited to see some of those cards in players' decks at tournaments.
Yeah, wonderful. Now, with that being said, we have more fun and exciting news coming in the case of Pavel, who is famous for their work on Pixelborn. Joe, I'll give you an opportunity here to kind of give everyone a kind of a briefing on what Pixelborn is, because it started with Lorcana, a digital client in Lorcana that I actually played. I thought it was remarkable. They shut it down, and everyone's like, they've got to be making a digital client if they shut it, and then just didn't. And I thought it was horrible for Lorcana as a game to lose this digital client. I think it actually had a super negative impact on its viability long term. So I'd be curious, first of all, on your thoughts on that. But secondly, Riftbound is being added to Pixelborn Connect, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, so Pixelborn Connect specifically is a webcam mode where you can basically queue up on a ladder and play webcam games against people. There's not always necessarily going to be a ladder. Usually there is on Pixelborn Connect, because I've done quite a bit of games myself. And in fact, on the screenshot, I can see hardcore ranked. So you can get like an MMR. You can queue up against other people who have a top-down camera. You can play your deck. It's a really good way of practicing. It's something that I'll probably try some streams of. What's interesting with webcam play for Riftbound is if you try and do it over Discord, it's actually very difficult to do the battlefield part of things, right? Because when you play in person, you've got the battlefields often sitting in between players. So actually having like a software for webcam play where there's like a designated area for that battlefield, I think is going to be really nice. And yeah, like you join the game, you say hello to your opponent, you can verbalize all your plays, you can practice manipulating your cards actually with your hands. A lot of people will go to tournaments and maybe have trouble like actually with that side of things if they're using sims. So it's really great to see Pixelborn Connect being added, and I think it's a really good tool that people should check out if they're looking to play some webcam games for Riftbound.
I like the fact that you mentioned like actually using the cards in your hands, because like for me, first of all, I play tons of card games, tons of TCGs. I'll never stop. You can't stop me. My wife can't stop me. No one's going to stop me. I'm going to keep spending money on TCGs. It is something I just absolutely love. And even then, the vast majority of my TCG experience, outside of like obviously like OG Magic and things like that, most of my time is spent in the digital space, right? Most of my time, that's where I kind of got my career jumpstart in Marvel Snap, stuff like that. So like I've lost a lot of those like tangible skills of manipulating cards with your hands, right? And it's funny because when I was at PAX Unplugged, we did like a little like a private Riftbound event. I was with a bunch of MTG Pro Tour players. It was so awesome seeing them like they were just so well versed in handling their cards, manipulating their cards, even something as simple as tapping, right? Like the way they did it was so natural. Meanwhile, me, the digital card game player, was like, oh, I'm fumbling my stuff around. So it is worth it, especially when like I was doing skirmishes, which are much more serious as opposed to just a standard kind of Nexus night. Like being able to manipulate your cards so that you're clearly identifying to your opponent what you're trying to do is actually a very important skill. Because if you're not manipulating your cards well, and it results in you getting an unfair advantage, or perhaps not showing your opponent things they need to see, like they should know how many cards are in your hand. They should know how many runes you've tapped, how many runes you have available. They need that information to play properly. And so it's important that you practice providing your opponent with the necessary information for them to play. And part of that is by manipulating your play appropriately. So it is something that like people might gloss over, but when it comes right down to it, having the practice of physically playing the cards, physically tapping your runes, physically showing what's being utilized as power, I think that's really important. And I even have the habit of like when I draw cards from the top of my deck in skirmishes, I will draw and put it face down onto the field to play first, and then draw it to my hand to make sure I'm only drawing one card. When you're playing competitively, I think those types of small things are important. So I don't want to just brush over how important learning how to manipulate cards is in a card game.
Yeah, it really is. It's something I've also had to learn the hard way, actually, from moving also from digital card games to physical card games. I've streamed a lot of my games, and unfortunately, I was quite sloppy and I made some mistakes on stream. And that's obviously not what you want to be doing. I'm sure we can all agree. And I think also, I mean, of course, there was this big Savage drama where they weren't paying costs for Showstopper. We weren't doing the podcast at that time, so we weren't talking about it. But I'm sure if we were, I would have had a lot to have said about that, where that situation that we saw with Savage is an example of someone that hasn't practiced enough using the physical cards. There was someone that was practicing almost exclusively using a digital client. And when you do that, you run the risk of making mistakes like that. And actually, to add to that, if you're having to think really hard about paying the costs properly and organizing your board properly, it's like you say, Alex, when you see these professional players, they just do it so seamlessly. And that means that they're using 100% of their brain power on the actual game. If you're sloppy as a player and you're not used to manipulating your physical cards, and you're having to think about how you're organizing everything, that is using brain power, which could be used to actually help you win the match. So I think it's an extremely underrated and important thing to be doing, is actually just playing with physical cards very, very often.
Absolutely. And I guess, you know what, as you go into Bologna, and myself, I'm going to Vegas to experience, the city of sin, as they call it. It's going to be the city of Riftbound that weekend, at least. But maybe we'll give Pixelborn a shot. You and I will give it a shot, see how it plays out. And we just want to let you guys know that it was out there and an option. Because if you can play with the cards that you've built and the decks that you've built, then hell yeah, I think that's absolutely worth it.
This kind of platform, just to close on that, Alex, because it's a platform I've used a lot for Lorcana. What a platform like this really needs is a steady player base. It needs people going on it routinely, so you're not having to queue a lot for matches. So it would be really great to see people in the community give this a go, because I think they'll really enjoy it.
Absolutely, there's no question about it. Now, talking about playing Riftbound, we have a deck that has completely taken over the zeitgeist out there. This might be the new banger, the new hotness, the worst kept secret one might have suggested. And we'll talk about those tweets in a moment. So Joe, this was a deck you were just dying to talk about today, so I'm going to give you the floor. We've got ourselves a new red purple Draven deck, and this might be the one to watch going into Bologna and Vegas.
Yeah, it certainly might be. It won a big event with over 300 players. It was an online tournament using TCG Arena. And Yeah, the deck seemed to absolutely pop off in a big way. We've got some tweets from the player sort of talking about their experience, which we'll look at in a moment. But essentially, their opponents every game said, wow, your deck just felt better than mine. So we know that Draven has been extremely strong in China as a legend. It's, of course, whenever you win a combat, draw one. Now, I think what's important to note about Draven is that is not limited to once a turn. If you can trigger multiple combats in one turn, you could draw multiple cards off Draven in a single turn. So Draven's very strong as a card draw engine. We know that Purple had a lot of consistency tools already in Origins with Stack Deck, Scrap Heap, Traveling Merchant as sort of some consistency tools. And it also got another really strong consistency tool in the form of Called Shot, which is a similar card to Stack Deck. It costs 0 energy and 1 purple power, and it has repeat. And you look at the top 2 cards of your deck, add 1 to your hand. So you could pay 2 purple power, 0 energy to look at the top 2 cards twice and add 1 to your hand. So it's a very, very strong card to draw, see more cards of your deck, see consistency. You've got Fizz Trickster, another card with a purple power cost, and she can play a spell card that costs 3 or less from your trash for free. I think you have to still pay the power cost, but not the energy costs. And then you've also got Ezreal, who when you play him, you discard 1, draw 2. Like, all of these have purple power costs. So immediately, Alex, as a big fanboy of the seals in general, I've had my eye on purple seals, and I'm a little bit dismayed to see that everybody else has as well. This deck is extremely consistent. You can cycle through your deck a bunch. You can draw a bunch of cards with Draven, and there's some really interesting ways of sort of cheating out cards on the cheap. For example, the new Battering Ram card. It costs 5 energy, but it costs less for every card you've played this turn. So you can get it down to 1 energy. I believe it costs 2 less for every card played this turn. So if you've played a stack deck already that turn, your Battering Ram will only cost you 3. If you've played 2 stack decks, it's only going to cost you 1, and you get 5 mites. So it's sort of comparable to a Noxus Hopeful. And then you've also got Rasa the Sunderer, which costs less for every card in your trash. So this deck is extremely strong in terms of card draw, and just going to be a menace to deal with, really. Like, it's just going to try and outvalue every other deck just through sheer card advantage.
I have to tell you, the most modern version of Teemo that I was playing, I was actually running Rasa. And the reason why is because when I'm using these merchants and I'm blowing up my hand and I'm obviously discarding tons of cards, looking for that consistency, Rasa was often like an extremely inexpensive card on my way towards Mundo. Now, naturally, Mundo can kind of munch into the value for Rasa, but overall, like, I was playing those cards earlier on, and Mundo was like my late game ride the wind type win condition. I thought it actually had a really good spot in those types of decks. It might even have been underutilized for the most part. And so I'm glad to see it kind of making a bit of an impact early on. And yeah, I mean, the seals are going to be expensive, unfortunately. I think they're still kind of expensive pieces here. Now, well, we'll talk about it. Maybe they're going down in price. Last time I checked, they were still kind of relatively costly. Joe, it looks like you kind of want to interject here.
Yeah, the Seal of Discord is like the card that's gone up this week. Like, it's the biggest riser, I think.
Of course, it's the only card that really.
I think I did warn people to stock up on seals in our last episode. I have a feeling I might have done so. I think the Seal of Discord's looking particularly good for the next set. I think every seal's sort of going to have its day. I've actually in prep for Bologna. Last week, I actually went through every seal and kind of like looked at the card pool available. Blue seal, I think, looks quite good. Maybe the orange seal. I think the yellow and the green ones, not so much, but I'm sure they'll have their day at some point.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Those seals, it has, it's like this evergreen effect that, like, there's going to come a point in time where they're valuable, I'm sure, right? As more sets come out, and obviously, power cost is a huge component of the game and how they cost and kind of try to balance these cards, and these seals are used to manipulate that to some degree. So yeah, I'm really excited for that, and I'm glad to see finally. I mean, we tried blue seals, and I didn't love it. I'll be honest with you. I saw the value in it, but at the same time, it wasn't quite for me. But here with the purple seals, like, I absolutely see it working for sure. Now, do you think? I'm just gonna throw this out here, Joe. I feel like we're gonna be talking about this deck more in the future because this is an absolute banger. But do you think that this type of deck, one that people are saying, we're talking about what people are saying. Do you want to jump to the tweets quick?
Yeah, let's look at the tweets.
Okay, so the tweets here, we have Gianluca, who was the one who created the deck, and they said, I started playing Riftbound 10 days ago. So a huge shout out goes to, their senseis, so their friends who taught them how to play. And they said, long story short, every opponent said to me the same thing over and over. It's like we're playing a different game. I really like this aspect of the game, which reward more of the deck building. I'm 100% sure I won yesterday because my deck was way better than others in the room. I love it. I love the idea that someone cooked and were very successful doing so. And one very notable person in the Riftbound community, one Casanova, who I greatly respect, had something to say about it. That Pandora's box has now been opened, Joe, and that this deck is the worst kept secret.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of talk about secret decks heading into Bologna from some members of the community. I think that there's a lot of testing groups going on. Of course, the pricing for Bologna is so huge. We saw these metal best of cards going for tens of thousands of dollars. So it's no surprise that people are trying to keep decks a secret in a sense. And I'm sure that there's some other very spicy decks out there as well for Spiritforged that are going to be, very, very strong. And I think the key thing with a deck like Draven is you're going to need to know how to beat it, because it can draw cards in quite an unfair way if you're not prepared. Like I remember, for example, Alex, the first time I played against Set, and I was like, that is so broken, that is not fair. How is that a real card? But then as you become more experienced playing against Set, you sort of recognize how to make things a little bit more awkward for them. And I think that's going to be key against a deck like this. If you're playing against a Draven player with this deck and you don't really know how to make things awkward for them, I think you're gonna have a really hard time. Because of course a combat could be won with Draven by using a card like Fight or Flight, for example, like moving away your opponent's card, you win the combat, even if like there's no damage that actually happens. So this deck's got a lot of cheeky tricks up its sleeve to draw a ton of cards, and I would imagine that once it starts drawing some cards, it can just kind of get out of control a little bit as well, right? It's going to be really interesting to see what decks are able to deal with this style, because it's very, very greedy in terms of its card draw, but it's also got a lot of tempo with cards like Battering Ram and Rasa the Sunderer. Also, Nocturne is another card which we've seen some players using in a similar sort of shell. So there's a lot of really aggressive tempo-orientated cards you can include in this deck.
I am absolutely here for some Nocturne Cope. You can rely on me for that. So maybe we'll just try to cook something a little special there. I mean, yeah, and Nocturne would work well. I think you'd have to make some adjustments here, right? Obviously, you do have that, like you're dipping into the deck quite a bit there. But yeah, like I think it could definitely work. And you got the power, you got the seals there. So got a little bit of a backup plan. But what I will say is that I was kind of talking about a couple things at once when I got all excited about the tweets. Do you think a deck like this is going to be the one that puts the target square on the new Draven's back? People have been talking about this card being like probably OP, and we were kind of like, you know what, it's still early, everyone calm down, it's no reason to be too concerned yet. And then this comes out and everyone's like, bro, this deck is wild. Do you think this takes it to the next level, or it's like, all right, maybe this thing needs to get nerfed?
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, listen, erratas are quite the thing already in Riftbound. Now, admittedly, the erratas that they've done in Origins were not exactly balance erratas, but rather they were sort of like rewordings of cards to sort of make things, like I think we all know that Origins is a bit rough around the edges. A lot of cards got errated because the card text didn't exactly read very well or things like this. So there's erratas already. Whether or not they want to use erratas as a way of balancing the game remains to be seen. I have seen some discussion that maybe Draven should be limited to drawing once per turn, because I think that the fact that you can draw multiple cards within your turn off the Draven could be problematic. But listen, I haven't quite got to my testing. I'm going to be watching the Chinese regionals very, very keenly this weekend, Alex. So I'm sure next week we can have some more discussion about this Draven deck, because I'm sure we're going to see it in action a lot this weekend. I'm going to be streaming the Chinese regionals on my channel, and I'm very, very excited to start seeing this deck in action. A little bit terrified, actually, if I'm honest, a little bit anxious about it, but I'm sure there's going to be some ways to deal with it. It's just about identifying what are the weaknesses of this deck, how can you beat it, and you sort of go from there, right? Like Kaiser experienced the same thing. Like Kaiser came out of the gate swinging. It was the best deck in the room by a mile, but then people found out how to beat it and the meta sort of adapted around it.
I love that you mentioned that. If this deck completely takes over, then Joe, you and I, we got to cook something that counters it. We got to cook and try to kind of go against the grain a little bit, right? Because we have to find that release valve that allows you to be successful here. Because hopefully, I mean, you really have to errata a card where the release valves either are not coming in the next set, are not present in the existing set, or it's so far ahead that like something has to be done. Because if the counters do exist, if there is, you know, the rock to the paper play or the scissors or whatever, right? Then it's worth pursuing, right? Give players the agency to counter it. But if it's just stupid, broken, and that opportunity does not exist, then that's perhaps where the errata has to come in. And I mean, I don't want to keep talking about Lorcana. We've brought up so many times in the past, but like Bucky was a good example of this, where like Bucky was just too stupid and had to get fixed, right? And I remember, I mean, you'd remember better because I remember competing in the Toronto DLC. It was just after Bucky, and the DLC, the Disney Lorcana Challenge, prior to that was like an astronomical percentage of this single card. Like, do you remember? Was it like 80% or something? Like that was.
I don't think it was. It wasn't quite that high. I think that the big thing with Bucky, Bucky was like a card which, when it's down on the board, is very hard to target and remove. And then it could start discarding with synergies, other cards in hand. It didn't ever have the bigger play rate. It was more the impact it was having on game state. Like it was just not very fun to play against. And it resulted in a lot of like non-games. Like there was just a lot of decks which just completely and utterly could not be played because they would just lose 100% of the time to Bucky. That was the big problem with that particular card.
Yeah. And I wonder if Draven's going to go that route there. And
I doubt it.
Yeah,
I doubt it. I think like the important context of Draven is it's also a legend in red purple, which already has Annie. So like I'm not even totally convinced yet that it's going to be the be all and end all. Like I wouldn't be that surprised to see Annie making a real resurgence. I suppose a key thing would be what's the Annie into Draven matchup like, and you would have to imagine that Draven's probably got the edge there. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that all shakes up.
I was really just about to say that. It's a good thing that Red Purple got more support in Spiritforged because it was desperately needing it. Yeah. I obviously picked the correct nameplate colors here, eh?
Yeah, true.
Your poor blue-yellow needing a little bit of help, I think, eh?
I think so. Okay, so we're now going to take a look at the Riftbound market and what is happening. Looking specifically to begin with at the most expensive cards in Riftbound Origins, which are not overnumbered cards and are not promo cards. So the most expensive cards in the game, as you can see here, Alex, across the board are going down in price, which is probably because Spiritforged is coming out soon. The meta is going to be shaken up. People have already played their skirmishes. They're looking to sell and maybe buy back cards later on. I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit though, Alex, and I want to see how many of the most expensive cards in Riftbound you can correctly name. Let's go for the top 3 cards. How many of the most 3 expensive cards can you name?
Well, thank you so much for putting me on the spot here. For what it's worth, I actually don't see this information right now. So it's like a little bit of editing magic where you guys can see, but I can't. I'm going to say Kaisa has got to be one of the top 3.
Kaisa is the most expensive card in Riftbound,
okay.
Which it wasn't for a while, but it is now in the top spot.
Okay, I would say Predator would be close.
Yep, Deadboom Predator number 2. He's 2 out of 3. Can he go the full shebang?
Now, you know, my mind is saying Dazzling Aurora, but I think it would have gone down. I feel like that's one of the big fallers, right? Because of the way the meta has shifted in Spiritforged. So I feel like I'm saying Dazzling Aurora, but I know I'm wrong.
Yeah, Dazzling Aurora is not. It is actually 5th place, though, so not a bad guess at all. So 3rd place and 4th place are the 2 that you've sort of missed. One of these cards was the most expensive at one time, and one of these cards has no business being in the top expensive cards. So 3rd place is Time Warp.
I was going to say Time Warp. Damn it. Okay. Yeah, once you said it was once the most expensive,
yes.
Like, it's Time Warp. It's Time Warp.
And the 4th most expensive card, more expensive than Dazzling Aurora, is Flash, a common card, which is not ideal. I think we can all agree.
That's ridiculous. I was
But
not going to guess Flash. That's
yeah.
ridiculous. That goes to show you just what happened in Houston. Houston was the moment for Flash, man.
Yeah. So if we're taking a look at the trends, we can see that we've got some downwards arrows on pretty much all of these cards from Origins. And this is something that I think was somewhat predictable. Perhaps it's wave 2 coming in and cards being more readily available. I would imagine more so, Alex, it's players that have invested big bucks into these cards. They've wanted them for their skirmish events. They've wanted them for their starting decks for Riftbound. But now they're starting to look ahead and see, okay, Spiritforged is on the horizon. Maybe now is the right time to sell my cards. And basically what's happening is it's the seller's market. There's more people selling than are looking to buy right now, which is resulting in the cards going down in price. So we're seeing, for example, with Coccia Survivor, 22.3% drop. Deckbuilding Predator, 20% drop. Time Warp, 13% drop. But Dazzling Aurora with a 34.9% drop. It's still up at $38, so it's not cheap by any means, but Dazzling Aurora, one of the biggest fallers, that is for sure. Now, we've actually got on the next page a big riser. Probably the biggest riser of the past few weeks here is the Seal of Discord, which we talked about already. It's now up at $32.15. That is a 136.9% increase. So it really goes to show you, Alex, that like these physical card games, they do have like their secondary markets, and there's opportunities for people, if you know the meta, to make money and sort of manipulate the market, if you will, which is always going to happen with this kind of game, right? When money's involved, there's going to be people speculating on prices.
It's exactly what you said last week. You told your friends, hey, you probably want to offload Dazzling Aurora soon if that's what you want to do. And it looks like, unless they didn't do it yet, they would have timed the market just about right and maybe got rid of their stuff before things dropped rather rapidly. Now, I want to also frame this with the statement that like the price is getting less expensive is generally a good thing for the game, right?
Yeah.
We're not talking about the alt arts. We're not talking about the signatures. The signatures should be expensive. Those are super cool collectibles. If I get a signature, I'm probably going to grade it or something cool. Like I want to do that, right? But the regular cards in here, like we don't want $100 time warps. We don't want Dazzling Auroras to be $80, right? That just sucks, and that prevents people from getting into the game. We want the cards you play with to be cheaper. We want the collectibles to be collectibles. And I feel like Riftbound has a very good setup for that. So I know it can be frustrating if you're like, oh, damn, I pulled a time warp. It's sad that it lost 20-something% of its value. But at the same time, like, we want this game to be healthy. And the way it gets healthy, if it becomes more accessible. So I feel like we're on the right path generally.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And I mean, it's even interesting. I'm taking a look now, Alex. I've been sort of skimming through all of the cards really and their price. And it's across the board, prices are down. Even seeing cards like Zonya's Hourglass down nearly 50%. Darius down nearly 40% as well. Now, you would have to imagine that some of these cards will pick up in price again at some point as people start getting their decks ready for Spiritforged. But right now, it definitely seems like prices are on the decrease. How long that's going to last remains to be seen. I also, Alex, wanted to take a look at some of the overnumbered cards and see where the sort of prices on these cards have settled. Because, of course, these are the most expensive cards in the game. Do you want to take let's have a bit more Alex prediction. In terms of overnumbered cards, do you want to have a guess at some of the prices for these? Like, Signature Kaiser is the most expensive. Do you have any idea how much it's going for right now?
Okay, just to set the stage for everyone who's watching is like, how does this guy not just read the screen or something? We have it set up so I can't see anything because Joe is like locally capturing his own screen. So in post-production for you guys watching, it makes sense. I can't actually see his screen right now at all. So that's why he's asking these questions. So it actually frames the prior conversation better as well. Man, how much would a Signature Kai'Sa go for? I bet you it can't be less than $1,000. I bet you it's still $1,000.
It is more than 1,000. I can confirm.
That's
but it's
actually surprising to me.
Significantly more than 1,000. It is by far and away the most expensive card in the set. It is a $1,900 card right now.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, that is the highest. And you would have to imagine, obviously, Kaiser is still looking pretty strong in Spiritforged format as well. But this is very much a card which is, its price is driven by its meta prowess rather than its, like League fandom, because the second most expensive signature card is not a particularly competitive card, but is rather a very popular League of Legends character.
Can I guess?
Yeah, go on.
It's Ari, isn't it?
It's Ari, yeah.
Okay, that was a layup. That one's a layup.
Me being an Arcane fanboy, I was pretty convinced before Origins came out that Jinx was going to be the chase card. She was certainly my chase card, but that just shows that I underestimate the power of League of Legends fans, because Ari is not really seeing any competitive play, but it is the second most expensive. Now, we've got Misfortune as the third. And by the way, Ari, any guesses on Ari price we should do?
Ari, I would say like if the other one's 1,900, I bet you this one's like 1,600, 1,700 bucks.
Yeah, 1,500 on Ari.
Wow,
as it stands.
That's still expensive. And like again though, you don't need this card to play, right? This is a purely collectible piece, which I really like. Like I'm glad there's collectibles here, and then like if you want to play Ari, you don't have to spend this money, you know what I mean?
And these are also with the signature as well. Of course, let's not forget that. These are like the even more premium versions of them. So we actually see a dramatic price drop for third place by more than half. So $742. Third most expensive signature is Misfortune. You've then got Jinx as the fourth at 700. Set also at around 700. Lee Sin at 650. Yasuo at 630. Leona at 600. Teemo at 570. Victor 550. And it looks like then to round things off, you've got Volibear and Darius at around 500 each. And it's sort of similar in terms of price range for like the most expensive signature is Kaiser, while the most expensive non-signature is also Kaiser, and the second most is also Ari. Any ideas on how much a Kaiser overnumbered without a signature would set you back?
Damn, you're really throwing me out on the spot here. Yeah. I would say like I would expect to pay like $250.
Yeah, Kaiser and Ari both around the 200 mark.
Okay.
For a non-signature, $200 US. And then the cheapest of these seems to be Darius, which is around $50. There might actually be some even cheaper, but it looks like Darius might be the cheapest at $50, which is interesting. I got to say the Darius artwork is not my personal favorite, but isn't that quite mind-blowing that I'm searching things by price order, and we've got Darius, overnumbered, non-signature, next to Flash. Like Flash is only $6 cheaper than a signature. That's not what I think Riot had in mind with the Proving Grounds release.
No, and that shouldn't remain either, right? Like they absolutely intend to not only reprint Proving Grounds, but I thought they were going to put in like the Nexus Knights packs, like the reward packs, which none of my LGS has had for me.
They're going to, but Flash is unfortunately not included in that. They mentioned that it's going to be like the rares and above, which Flash is unfortunately the one that's really missing from that. Yeah, not ideal.
Oh, that's a bit of a failure to read the room there. I mean, I'm going to throw this out there. This might be a stupid statement, and if it is, whatever. I've made many stupid statements in the past. Because they're being printed by different manufacturers, will there be a price premium on the one version of Flash versus the other?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, based off what Riot said in their article, the card stock should be near identical. But yeah, it's definitely possible that you could just make out some differences, right? And it could be like a collector's piece. I would say more so on the Flash single, that might impact like Proving Grounds sealed product more so, right? Like maybe the original print run of Proving Grounds holds a lot of value because it's noticeably different, for example. I'm not sure on that one.
Yeah, there's no way of knowing. Any other cards that really stand out to you? Anything that you want to shout out as maybe being like, well, this card dropped rather rapidly in cost, but might be worth picking up because maybe it has a bright future ahead? Like any kind of droppers, like the buy low crowd, looking to buy low and maybe sell high in the future. I know I'm throwing you on the spot now.
Yeah, maybe Thousand Tail Watcher could be one that would be worth picking up soon because it is going down in price, but I imagine this card is going to continue to be meta relevant. Having said that, it's not like one of the rarest cards, but it's continuing to go down in price. I would just say, like, keep an eye on the market, find the right time to buy your Origins cards before, people are buying their Spiritforged decks for Vegas and for Bologna. Like, around now might actually be a pretty good time to buy it. It's obviously really hard to speculate. I've got to say, Alex, that I'm not one to manipulate the markets or delve into the markets too much. I tend to just buy what I need. But if I was short of thousand-tailed watchers, I think I would be pulling the trigger quite soon.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? For me, I don't sell anything. I'll trade with some friends at LGSs, stuff like that, to complete my collection or try to work on a deck I'm working on. But I like collecting things. I still have my tons of Lorcana cards. With the sixth time we brought it up today. I got tons of altered cards. I got boxes of cards all over the place. And yeah, I just love collecting things. And to this day, I got a Pokemon binder. And not like the newest Pokemon craze where people fight each other at Costco for them. No, I ain't doing that. I'm talking about Pokemon packs that I opened before they became cool again. And I got a binder. Now my kids, look at them and love them and stuff like that. So I'm a collector. I always will be. I'm so happy that Riot and the Riftbound team had the foresight, though, to really separate the collection side of the game and the playable side of the game. You do have some overlap. Like Time Warp's not a collectible, so it costs a tremendous amount of money and stuff like that. But I'm glad the signature cards and the alt arts and stuff like that, they don't impede your opportunity to play, which I think is very significant.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm also really interested to see the prices currently, for the alt arts, Alex, haven't been too dramatic in terms of a price increase from the standard, which is, I think, interesting, and I would imagine might change moving forwards. I feel like a few of the alt arts in Origins are not. I would expect the alt arts to get better over time, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I think that they can do a little bit more with some of the alt arts and make them a little bit more desirable, because currently, in terms of prices, the alt arts are usually very, very similar price to the standard.
Yeah, and I guess that over time, Riftbound's going to continue to evolve. They learn from their mistakes in Origins and early sets. Hopefully, they're going to bring the release windows tighter and tighter. They're going to improve the printing quality. I think Spiritforged, from my understanding, might still have some of those frayed edges on some of the cards here and there. So that's still a little sad. We'll have to see when we start cracking packs. I believe
that the edges are supposed to be fixed for.
They're fixed for Spiritforged.
Yeah, it's the missing rare card slot is still going to be for Spiritforged, but they said that it's going to be that there shouldn't be the cutting issues, at least, which, to be honest, is the main thing for me.
That's good. The missing rare stuff still kind of sucks, but I mean, we'll give them a chance to correct course on that as well. Regardless, Joe, thank you so much to everyone for listening to this edition of the Into the Rift podcast. Next week, we start China regional coverage. Joe, you're going to be covering it on your Twitch channel. Do you do the dual stream thing?
Yeah, it's going to be on my YouTube as well. And let me tell you, Alex, it is going to be a disaster for my sleep schedule because, I'm not sure when I'm going to be sleeping, but I'm going to be prioritizing Riftbound over sleep this weekend. In fact, for the next 4 weekends, because there's all kinds of Chinese regionals happening. And I'm extremely excited to see these Spiritforged decks in action.
Absolutely. And so down below in the description, we will be linking both Joe's Twitch and Joe's YouTube, so you can subscribe and follow there and get to watch his analysis live alongside the Chinese regionals. But guys, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you on that next one.